What if you burst through your front door, only to freeze in horror as your maid, a woman you barely trusted, kneels by your son's bedside, coaxing him to sip a steaming, unknown herbal brew during a terrifying asthma attack? In the opulent Harrington estate on the outskirts of New York, billionaire Richard Harrington unleashes his fury, accusing Elena Rodriguez of poisoning his child with immigrant nonsense, firing her on the spot in a public tirade that shatters her dignity and threatens deportation. All while little Tommy clings to her, sobbing in confusion. But what if this act of desperation hides a shocking truth? Elena's secret past as an unlicensed nurse from Mexico, honed in remote villages, saving lives like her own son's, who battles the same relentless illness. This revelation could shatter prejudices, forge unbreakable bonds, and redefine family forever. Dive into this emotional roller coaster of redemption and heart. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss these gripping tales, and comment below. Where are you watching from today? The sun dipped low over the sprawling suburbs of New York, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of the Harrington estate. Elena Rodriguez knelt on the cool marble floor of the grand foyer, her scrub brush moving in rhythmic circles. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't pause. At 35, her hands were calloused from years of labor, first in the dusty villages of Mexico, now in this gleaming world of wealth she could barely touch. She dipped the brush into the soapy bucket, the water sloshing softly, and thought of Miguel, her 5-year-old son, waiting in their cramped apartment across town, his chest rising and falling with that familiar wheeze. Elena's dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, strands escaping to frame her tired face. She wore the standard uniform, a simple gray dress that hung loosely on her slender frame, practical but faded from too many washes. As she worked, she hummed a faint lullaby, one her mother had sung back home. It was a habit, a quiet rebellion against the silence of this empty house. But today, the melody caught in her throat. Miguel's asthma had flared up again last night. She'd held him through the coughing fits, rubbing his back until dawn, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. The envelope in her pocket crinkled as she shifted. It was payday, and half would go straight to the wire transfer office for her parents in Mexico, her father's heart condition eating away at their savings, her mother's weary pleas echoing in every phone call. "Mija, we need you," they'd say. Elena pressed harder on the floor, the brush scraping against a stubborn stain. She was a single mother, who had been since Miguel's father vanished years ago, leaving her to cross the border alone. No papers, no safety net, just grit and the unyielding drive to give her boy a chance. Upstairs, she heard a faint cough. Tommy, the Harrington boy. 5 years old, just like Miguel, with the same shadowed eyes from endless nights of labored breathing. Elena paused, her ears attuned to that sound. She'd noticed it weeks ago when she first started here. Mr. Harrington's son, pampered in every way except the one that mattered, someone to truly listen to his lungs. She straightened up, wiping her hands on her apron. The house was vast, rooms echoing with unused luxury, crystal chandeliers that caught the light like distant stars, Persian rugs that muffled her footsteps. But it felt cold, despite the summer heat seeping through the windows. Elena glanced at the clock on the wall, ornate, gold-trimmed, ticking relentlessly. Her shift ended soon, but she always lingered a bit, checking on Tommy if the nanny was late. The boy had taken to her, his small hands tugging at her dress, asking for stories in her accented English. "Tell me about the mountains, Lena," he'd say, his voice muffled by his inhaler. She smiled at the memory, a rare warmth blooming in her chest. Children were her weakness, always had been. Back in Mexico, She'd helped care for the village kids, mixing remedies from herbs her abuela taught her. No formal degree, just instinct and necessity. Here, in America, that knowledge felt like a secret she couldn't share. But secrets weighed heavy. Last week, the cook had whispered about Mr. Harrington's temper, how he'd fired the gardener for looking suspicious. Elena had nodded silently, her stomach twisting. She knew the looks, the narrowed eyes when she spoke Spanish on the phone, the way deliveries were handed to her, like she might steal them. "You're just the help," one neighbor had sneered once, when she'd picked up Tommy from a playdate. She swallowed the bitterness, focusing on the floor. Survival meant silence. Speak up, and you lose everything. Miguel's face flashed in her mind again. His curly hair, his gap-toothed grin when the attack subsided. She'd promised him ice cream tonight, if she could scrape together the change. Her back ached as she stood, stretching subtly. The bucket sloshed as she carried it to the sink, water swirling down the drain like her fading dreams. A better life. That's why she'd come. But better felt distant, buried under layers of exhaustion and unspoken fears. What if Miguel's next attack was worse? What if the money ran out? She rinsed the brush, her reflection in the window staring back, determined eyes, lines etched from worry. Down the hall, Tommy's cough echoed again, sharper this time. Elena froze, her heart quickening. The nanny was out sick today, and Mr. Harrington was at a meeting. She shouldn't interfere. That wasn't her job. But the sound tugged at her, a mother's instinct overriding caution. She set the bucket down, wiping her hands once more. Just a quick check, she told herself. No harm in that. Her footsteps were soft on the stairs, the lullaby resuming under her breath. Little did she know, the house held more than echoes today. As she reached the landing, Tommy's door creaked open under her gentle push. The boy lay on his bed, his chest heaving, toy cars scattered around him like forgotten soldiers. "Lena," he wheezed, reaching out. Elena knelt beside him, her hand cool on his forehead. Feverish. She glanced around, no inhaler in sight. Panic flickered in her eyes, but she pushed it down. "Shh, mijo," she whispered, using the endearment without thinking. "I'll help you." In the kitchen downstairs, she rummaged through her bag, a small pouch of dried herbs she'd brought from home, just in case. Eucalyptus, honey, a pinch of something her abuela swore by. It saved Miguel so many times. Boiling water on the stove, the steam rising like a prayer. She stirred the mixture, the aroma filling the air. Earthy. Soothing. This would ease him, buy time until the doctor arrived. She carried the cup upstairs carefully, her mind racing. Mr. Harrington wouldn't like this, but Tommy needed it now. Tommy sipped tentatively, his small face relaxing as the warmth spread. "Better," he murmured, leaning against her. Elena stroked his hair, her own worries melting for a moment. This was why she endured. The innocence of children, the way they trusted without question. But deep down, a voice whispered, "Be careful. You're not family here. You're just the maid." The front door slammed suddenly. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Elena's heart leaped to her throat. Mr. Harrington, home early. She stood quickly, cup in hand, as his shadow filled the doorway. His eyes locked on the scene, narrowing in fury. But that was for later. For now, in this quiet moment, Elena was simply a woman trying to hold the world together, one breath at a time. Richard Harrington slammed the phone down on his polished mahogany desk, the echo reverberating through his corner office high above the New York skyline. At 50, his face was a map of sharp lines, jaw set like steel, eyes narrowed under salt and pepper brows. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers drumming impatiently on the armrest. The city sprawled below like a conquered kingdom, buildings he'd helped finance piercing the clouds. But today, the view did nothing to ease the knot in his chest. "Damn delays," he muttered, glancing at the clock. Another board meeting dragged on, investors nitpicking his latest acquisition. Richard rubbed his temples, the gold wedding band still on his finger catching the light, a ghost of 3 years past. The accident replayed in flashes, sirens wailing, shattered glass, his wife's voice fading in the wreckage. Gone, just like that. Leaving him with Tommy, the boy who looked so much like her, but carried her frailty in his lungs. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His suit was impeccably tailored, dark wool hugging his broad frame, a tie knotted with precision. Power radiated from him, the kind built on ruthless deals and unyielding control. Downstairs in the lobby, employees scattered like leaves when he passed, whispering about his temper. "Fired the assistant last week for a typo," they'd say. Richard didn't care. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, not after the world had stolen his family. His phone buzzed, a text from the nanny. "Tommy's cough is back. Doctor en route." Richard's grip tightened on the device. Asthma. The word twisted like a knife. Tommy, his only anchor, wheezing through nights that reminded him too much of loss. He'd poured fortunes into specialists, inhalers stacked like ammunition in the medicine cabinet. But nothing silenced the fear gnawing at him. What if he failed? What if Tommy slipped away too? He fired off a reply. "Handle it. Be home soon." Pocketing the phone, he grabbed his coat. The elevator ride down was silent, his reflection in the mirrored wall stern and unyielding. Immigrants, he thought. Mind drifting to the staff at home. Unreliable. Elena, the new maid, Mexican, quiet, always humming those foreign tunes. She'd been there months, scrubbing floors without complaint. But something about her set his teeth on edge. The way she lingered near Tommy's room, eyes soft when the boy coughed. "Just cleaning," she'd say, averting her gaze. Richard snorted inwardly. Cleaning didn't involve hovering like that. The drive home blurred in traffic, his Mercedes cutting through lanes with impatient honks. Suburbs unfolded, manicured hedges, estates like his own fortress of glass and stone. He pulled into the driveway, tires crunching gravel. The house loomed, pristine on the outside, hollow within. No laughter greeted him anymore, just echoes and the faint scent of lemon polish. Elena's work, he supposed. Competent enough, but who knew what she brought in from her world? Herbs, superstitions, nothing like the sterile precision of American medicine. Inside, he tossed his keys on the console table, the clatter sharp. "Anyone home?" His voice boomed, authoritative. No answer. Upstairs, a soft murmur drifted down. Elena's voice, low and soothing. Richard's brow furrowed. The nanny should be handling Tommy. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his polished shoes thudding on the carpet. Tommy's door was ajar, light spilling out. He paused, hand on the frame, peering in. The boy sat on the bed, small chest heaving, face flushed. Elena knelt nearby, her back to the door, stirring something in a cup. Steam rose, carrying an unfamiliar herbal scent. Tommy reached for it, trusting. Richard's blood boiled. What was this? Some backyard remedy? His mind raced to warnings, unvetted help, risks to his son. "No one touches my family," he thought, fists clenching. Grief fueled the rage, twisting it into something protective, primal. He burst in, but that's for another moment. For now, he lingered in the shadow, watching, suspicion coiling like smoke. Elena turned slightly, oblivious, her focus on the child. Richard's jaw tightened. Boundaries existed for a reason. Cross them, and you'd pay. He exhaled sharply, steeling himself. The house held its breath, the air thick with unspoken tension. Tommy coughed again, weaker. Richard's heart skipped, fear masked as anger. This ends now, he vowed silently. But deep down, a crack formed, doubt whispering, "What if you're wrong?" The clock ticked in the hallway, relentless. Richard straightened his tie, a habit before battle. Boardrooms he conquered easily. Home was war of a different kind. Elena offered the cup to Tommy, her expression gentle. Richard's eyes hardened. Immigrant nonsense, he labeled it dismissively. No room for that here. His world was order, control. Anything else threatened the fragile walls he'd built around his son. As the steam curled upward, Richard felt the pull of memory, his wife's hand on Tommy's forehead, calm in crisis. Gone. Now, this stranger dared step in. Unacceptable. He pushed the door wider, ready to unleash. But in that split second, Tommy's breathing eased slightly, a small sigh escaping. Richard blinked, unsettled. No, he told himself. Coincidence? His biases roared louder, drowning the flicker of curiosity. The conflict brewed, invisible but inevitable, like storm clouds gathering over the estate. Downstairs, the phone rang. The doctor, perhaps. Richard ignored it, fixated. Elena's lullaby resumed, soft Spanish words floating. Foreign, intrusive. He clenched his teeth. Time to remind her of her place. The boy Khan was set. A man armored in wealth and grief, facing a quiet intruder in his domain. One spark, and it would ignite. Richard stepped forward, shadow lengthening. The air grew heavier, charged. Tommy looked up, innocent eyes meeting his father's storm. Elena sensed the shift, her shoulders tensing, but she continued, unaware of the fury about to descend. Richard's mind raced. Protect Tommy. At any cost. The pieces aligned, tension coiling tight. The house, once a sanctuary, now a powder keg. Richard Harrington's Mercedes purred to a halt in the driveway, the engine cutting off with a decisive click. He grabbed his briefcase, slamming the car door harder than necessary. The board meeting had dragged, voices droning about margins and markets, but his mind kept drifting to Tommy's text from the nanny. "Cough back. Doctor coming." His jaw clenched as he strode toward the house, keys jangling in his pocket. The estate loomed like a silent sentinel, windows glowing faintly in the late afternoon sun. He needed control. Now, more than ever. Inside, the air carried an unfamiliar scent. Earthy, herbal, mingling with the usual polish and pine. Richard's nose wrinkled. What was that? He dropped his briefcase by the console, his polished shoes echoing on the marble as he headed upstairs. Tommy's coughs reached him first, sharp, ragged bursts that twisted his gut. "Damn it," he muttered, quickening his pace. The nanny should have handled this. Where was she? The door to Tommy's room stood ajar, light spilling into the hallway. Richard pushed it open, his broad frame filling the threshold. There, on the edge of the bed, sat Elena Rodriguez. Her gray uniform dress was smudged with faint water stains, dark hair escaping her ponytail. She held a steaming cup in one hand, the other gently supporting Tommy's back as the boy sipped from it. Tommy's small face, usually pale, flushed with effort, but his breathing seemed to steady. The room smelled strongly of the brew. Eucalyptus, honey, something foreign. "What the hell is this?" Richard's voice boomed, low and thunderous. Elena jerked upright, the cup trembling in her grip. Hot liquid sloshed over the rim, dripping onto the carpet. Tommy's eyes widened, his tiny hands clutching the bedsheet. "Daddy?" the boy wheezed, confusion etching his features. Elena's face paled, her brown eyes darting from Richard to the cup. "Mr. Harrington, Tommy was coughing bad. The nanny called in sick, and the doctor isn't here yet. This tea is made from herbs. It helps with the breathing, like for my son." Richard's fists balled at his sides, veins pulsing in his neck. Herbs? From her? His mind raced, Images flashing, tabloid stories of quack remedies, immigrants peddling untested junk. "You're giving my son some backyard potion? Are you insane?" He stepped forward, snatching the cup from her hand. The liquid swirled, dark and suspicious. "This isn't a village hut in Mexico. We have real medicine here." Tommy reached out weakly. "Lena, it helps." But Richard ignored him, his glare fixed on Elena. She stood slowly, hands clasped in front of her, shoulders hunched. Inside her thoughts churned. "Don't argue, he'll call immigration. Miguel needs you home." But her eyes flicked to Tommy, worry creasing her brow. The boy needed more than anger right now. "Get out," Richard snarled, setting the cup down with a clatter on the nightstand. "You're fired. Pack your things and leave. Now." His voice carried down the hall, drawing the butler from the kitchen. The older man hovered in the doorway, eyebrows raised, but said nothing. Elena's lips parted, a protest forming. "Sir, please, it's just eucalyptus. Safe. I use it for Miguel. He has asthma, too." Her accent thickened under stress, words tumbling out. But Richard cut her off, pointing a finger like a weapon. "I don't care about your kid or your remedies. You're the maid. You clean. You don't play doctor with my son." His face reddened, grief bubbling up his rage. What if this poisoned him? Like the accident took Sarah, unseen dangers everywhere. Tommy started to cry, small sobs mixing with coughs. "Don't yell at Lena, Daddy." He tugged at Elena's dress, but Richard scooped him up, holding the boy close. Tommy's warmth against his chest only fueled the fire. "She's leaving, son. She's dangerous." Elena backed away, her hands trembling as she smoothed her apron. Tears welled, but she blinked them back. Not here. Not in front of him. She thought of Miguel waiting, of the rent due, of her parents' frail voices on the phone. This job was her lifeline. Gone in a flash. "I was only helping," she whispered, voice breaking slightly. But Richard's expression hardened, unyielding. The butler cleared his throat. "Sir, the doctor just pulled up." Richard nodded curtly, not breaking eye contact with Elena. "Good. Escort her out. Make sure she takes nothing." He turned to the window, Tommy still in his arms, the boy's tears soaking his shirt. Inside, a flicker of doubt. Tommy had seemed better for a moment. But no. Better safe. Better alone than risking it all. Elena gathered her bag from the hall closet, movements mechanical. The butler walked her to the door, his face sympathetic. "He's scared, miss. For the boy." She nodded, throat tight. "I know." Outside, the driveway stretched long and empty. She walked down it, head high despite the ache in her chest. The gate clanged shut behind her. Fired. Publicly shamed. For helping. Back in the room, Richard set Tommy down as the doctor entered, stethoscope ready. "What happened here?" the doctor asked, eyeing the spilled cup. Richard waved it off. "Nothing. Just the maid overstepping." But as the doctor examined Tommy, Richard's mind replayed Elena's words. "Like for my son." He pushed it away, focusing on the inhaler the doctor administered. Control restored. Or so he thought. Tommy whimpered. "Where's Lena?" Richard shushed him, but the question lingered, a crack in his armor. The staff whispered in the kitchen. The firing spread like wildfire. Public. Final. Elena's kindness was dismissed as a threat. Richard stared out the window, watching her figure recede down the street. Good riddance, he told himself. But his hand shook slightly, the weight of his words settling like lead. The sun dipped lower, shadows lengthening. Richard poured himself a scotch downstairs, the glass cool against his palm. Tommy's cries echoed faintly from above. He sipped, the burn steadying him. She'd crossed the line. End of story. Yet doubt gnawed, quiet and insistent. What if the tea had worked? He shook his head. No, immigrants like her, unpredictable. Better this way. Upstairs, the doctor left with instructions. Richard tucked Tommy in, the boy's eyes searching. She made it better, Daddy. Richard's heart twisted. Sleep, son. Alone in the hall, he leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. The house felt emptier, his decision ironclad. But the herbal scent lingered, a ghost challenging his certainty. Outside, Elena boarded the bus, clutching her bag. Tears fell now, silent, fired for caring. The city lights blurred past, home to Miguel, to uncertainty. But in her mind, Tommy's face, she hoped he'd be okay. The injustice burned, public and raw. Her world shifted, one act of kindness repaid with cruelty. Richard returned to his study, papers scattering under his restless hands. The firing felt right in the moment. Protective. But Tommy's whimpers replayed. He poured another drink. Tomorrow, a new nanny. Clean slate. Yet the doubt persisted, a seed planted in fertile soil of grief. The evening deepened, the estate quiet save for distant traffic. Richard sat in the dark, glass empty. Elena's expression haunted him, hurt but dignified. He dismissed it. Weakness. The conflict ignited, flames licking at the edges of his world. Elena Rodriguez clutched her worn bag tighter as the bus rumbled away from the Harrington estate, the suburbs blurring into smears of green and gray. Her hand still trembled from Richard's roar, the echo of his words. "You're fired," ringing in her ears like a slammed door. She stared out the grimy window, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. Not here. Not on this crowded bus where strangers might see. Miguel needed her strong, not broken. The seat jostled beneath her, the engine's hum vibrating through her bones. She shifted, the envelope of her final paycheck crinkling in her pocket. Meager, but it would cover rent for another month. Maybe. Her mind raced. What now? Ads for house-cleaning gigs? Another family? Another set of suspicious eyes? She thought of Tommy's small face, twisted in confusion as his father yanked him away. "Lena helps," the boy whimpered. Elena's chest ached. She'd only wanted to ease his pain, like she did for Miguel. The herbs weren't poison. They were life, passed down from her abuela's sun-baked hands. Home loomed ahead, a squat apartment building with peeling paint and flickering hallway lights. Elena climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavy. Her key scraped in the lock, the door creaking open to reveal the dim living room. Miguel sat on the threadbare couch, coloring with crayons, his chest rising steadily. For now. "Mama," he beamed, scrambling into her arms. She hugged him tight, burying her face in his curly hair, inhaling the scent of soap and innocence. "How was your day, mijo?" "Good. Draw a car for you." He held up the paper, red scribbles zooming across the page. Elena forced a smile, her lips quivering. "Beautiful. Just like you." But inside, turmoil churned, fired for helping. Mr. Harrington's face flashed, red, accusatory, his finger jabbing like a verdict. "Immigrant nonsense," he sneered. She swallowed the bitterness, setting Miguel down. No time for self-pity. Dinner needed making. Rice and beans, stretched thin. As she chopped onions in the tiny kitchen, tears finally fell, mixing with the sting of the vegetable. Why defend herself? Words wouldn't change a man like him, armored in wealth and fear. She'd seen it before. Bosses who viewed her as disposable, a shadow in their perfect homes. But Tommy, his coughs haunted her. Was he okay? She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, the fabric rough against her skin. Focus on Miguel. He wheezed softly from the living room, a reminder of her own battles. Last night's attack had drained their last inhaler dose. Tomorrow, the clinic. Free, but crowded. Judgmental nurses asking for papers she couldn't show. Night fell, the apartment growing cooler. Elena tucked Miguel into bed, rubbing his back in slow circles. "Sleep well, Amor." He murmured something about superheroes, eyelids drooping. She lingered, watching his chest rise and fall, each breath a fragile victory. In the quiet, doubt crept in. Should she have stayed silent? Begged? No, pride held her tongue, but worry gnawed. What if Tommy suffered because of her absence? Across town, Richard Harrington paced his study, the Scotch glass sweating in his hand. Tommy's whimpers echoed from upstairs, faint but persistent. The doctor had left hours ago, prescribing stronger meds, but the boy's eyes kept searching the door. "Where's Lena?" he'd asked again, voice small. Richard raked a hand through his hair, the gray strand sticking up. Damn it. The firing felt right, protective. But now, doubt slithered in, uninvited. He sank into his armchair, the leather creaking under his weight. The room was dim, lit only by a desk lamp casting long shadows. Elena's face replayed, shocked, then resigned, her eyes dropping as she left. No fight, just quiet dignity. It unsettled him. Most staff argued, pleaded. Not her. He sipped the scotch, the burn sliding down his throat. Tommy had breathed easier after that tea. Coincidence? Or something more? Upstairs, he checked on the boy. Tommy lay curled under the covers, toy cars clutched in his fist. "Daddy, Lena coming back." Richard's throat tightened. "No, son. She's gone." Tommy's lip quivered. "But she sings nice. Makes the cough go away." Richard sat on the bed's edge, hand hovering awkwardly before patting the boy's shoulder. "We'll find someone better." But the words tasted hollow. Tommy turned away, a soft sob escaping. Back in the study, Richard poured another drink. The staff had whispered. He caught fragments. She was good with the boy. Fired for helping? He dismissed it, but curiosity prickled. Who was she, really? That tea. Folk remedy or threat? He glanced at his phone, thumb hovering over contacts. The agency could replace her tomorrow. But Tommy's cries lingered, pulling at him. Elena, meanwhile, lay awake in her narrow bed, Miguel's steady breathing beside her. The ceiling cracks stared back like accusing eyes. Fired publicly, shamed before the butler. Word would spread. Other jobs harder to find. She rolled over, hugging her pillow. Tommy's face again, trusting, relieved after the sip. Had she overstepped? No. A child in pain needed help. But Mr. Harrington saw only danger, his biases blinding him. Morning light filtered through thin curtains. Elena rose early, brewing coffee in the chipped pot. Miguel stirred, coughing lightly. She rushed to him, hand on his forehead. Warm, but not feverish. "School today?" he asked. She nodded, masking worry. No job meant no stability. But she'd endure. Always had. Richard watched from his window as the new day dawned, Tommy's empty breakfast plate before him. The boy picked at his food, eyes downcast. "Miss Lena." Richard's fork paused midair. Observation turned to unease. Perhaps he'd been hasty. But pride held firm. No apologies yet. Still, he noted the silence in the house, heavier without her hums. The boy suffered. That much was clear. Elena stepped out, locking the door behind her. The job hunt started now, papers underarm, resolved in her step. But her thoughts drifted to the estate. Was Tommy breathing easy? She shook her head. Not her concern anymore. Yet compassion tugged, unbreakable. Richard called the agency, voice clipped. "Send replacements." But as he hung up, Tommy's cough echoed down the hall. He observed a crack widening in his certainty. The reaction simmered. Elena's quiet resilience, his growing watchfulness. The escalation brewed, unseen but building. In the market, Elena shopped sparingly, coins counted carefully. A neighbor nodded. Heard about Harrington. Unfair. She smiled faintly. Life goes on. But inside, resolve hardened. She'd survive. For Miguel. For herself. Richard lingered by Tommy's room, listening. The boy's play was listless. Cars pushed half-heartedly. Daddy, call Lena? Richard exhaled. No. But he observed, the seed of doubt sprouting. Her absence spoke volumes. Elena hugged Miguel at school drop-off, his small hand waving. Be good. She walked away, chin up. Tui Nook faded to determination. Help would come from somewhere. The day wore on, Richard in meetings, mind divided. Tommy's nanny reported, he's asking for her. He nodded, filing it away. Observation turned inward. Was fear driving him? Or wisdom? Elena scanned job listings at the library, fingers flying over the keyboard. Rejections loomed, but she pressed on. Reaction. Quiet. Steadfast. No breaking. Twilight fell. Richard sat alone, glass in hand again. Tommy slept fitfully. He watched the shadows, questioning for the first time. Richard Harrington slammed the agency folder onto his desk, papers scattering like fallen leaves. The new nanny's resume stared back, credentials impeccable, references glowing. She'll do, he barked into the phone, hanging up without a goodbye. His study felt stuffier than usual, the air thick with unresolved tension. He leaned back, fingers steepled, a king surveying his domain. Tommy's latest cough echoed faintly from upstairs, a nagging reminder. But Richard pushed it aside. Control was key. Elena was gone. Problem solved. The next morning, the new nanny arrived. Crisp uniform, clipboard in hand, all efficiency and no warmth. I'm Miss Carter, she announced, shaking Richard's hand firmly. He nodded approvingly. Tommy needs structure. No nonsense. She followed him upstairs, where Tommy sat on the floor, pushing toy cars listlessly. The boy's eyes lit up briefly, then dimmed. Where's Lena? Miss Carter knelt awkwardly. I'm here now, sweetie. Tommy turned away, his small shoulders slumping. Richard watched from the doorway, arms crossed. See? Replaceable. But as the day wore on, Tommy's wheezes grew sharper. Miss Carter fumbled with the inhaler, her instructions rote and detached. Breathe in, hold. Tommy squirmed, tears welling. Want Lena's song? Richard's jaw tightened. Nonsense. He strode in, scooping the boy up. Enough. She's gone. This is better. Inside, irritation bubbled. The kid was just being difficult, testing him. By evening, Tommy's attack hit full force. Chest heaving, face red, he clutched at Richard's shirt. Ms. Carter panicked, dialing the doctor. Richard paced the room, phone in hand. Hurry up, he snapped at the line. The herbal scent from days ago ghosted his memory. Elena's brew had calmed it faster. He shook his head. Superstition. Weakness. The doctor arrived, administering a nebulizer, mist filling the air like fog. Tommy relaxed eventually, but his eyes searched the shadows. Lena. Richard dismissed the doctor with a curt nod, then turned to Miss Carter. Handle it better next time. She nodded stiffly, but he saw the doubt in her eyes. Alone in his study, he poured a scotch, the amber liquid swirling. Tommy's getting worse because of her absence. Ridiculous. It was Elena's fault. Planting ideas in the boy's head. His mind hardened. Time to ensure she stayed gone. The next day, Richard sat at his desk, dialing a number he'd noted from a business contact. Immigration Services. Yes, I'd like to report a potential issue, he said smoothly, voice laced with authority. A former employee, Elena Rodriguez, Mexican, possibly undocumented. She was administering unauthorized substances to my child. The agent took notes, promising a check. Richard hung up, a smug curl to his lips. There, protected. Tommy would forget her soon enough. In the kitchen, the staff bustled, chopping vegetables, butler polishing silver. Richard entered, clearing his throat. Heads turned. "Listen up," he announced, voice booming. "That maid, Elena, she crossed lines. Gave my son some witch's brew, risked his life. If anyone hears from her, report it. We don't tolerate that here." The cook averted her eyes, knife pausing mid-slice. The butler nodded slowly, but his expression tightened. Whispers followed as Richard left. Harsh. She was kind to the boy. Richard overheard fragments, his ego inflating. They needed reminding who was in charge. He strode to the boardroom downtown, suit impeccable, closing deals with ruthless precision. "Cut the weak links," he told investors, mirroring his home philosophy. Back at the estate, Tommy refused lunch, pushing the plate away. Ms. Carter sighed. "He's asking for her again." Richard, on speakerphone, scoffed. "Discipline him. No coddling." Nights blurred into restlessness. Tommy's attacks recurred, midnight wheezes pulling Richard from sleep. He hovered by the bed, watching Ms. Carter administer meds with clinical detachment. Tommy cried out, "Lena!" Richard's fists clenched. Ungrateful. But doubt flickered, quickly quashed. Arrogance surged instead. He called the agency again. "Send another if this one fails." Options were endless for a man like him. Publicly, he amplified the criticism. At a dinner party with associates, wine glass in hand, he regaled the table. "Fired the maid last week. Caught her poisoning Tommy with some immigrant concoction. Can't be too careful." Laughter rippled, nods of agreement. "Smart move, Richard." His chest swelled. "See? Validation." But one guest tilted her head. "Was it really poison?" He waved it off. "Close enough. Risks aren't worth it." Home again, Richard stood by Tommy's window, city lights twinkling far off. The boy's inhaler lay on the nightstand, a silent accusation. Attacks more frequent now. Coincidence? No. Elena's disruption. He dialed immigration once more, following up. "Any updates?" Pushy, insistent. Power flexed like a muscle. The staff grew quieter around him, exchanges clipped. The cook served dinner with downcast eyes. Richard noticed, interpreting it as respect. Good. Order restored. But Tommy's whimpers pierced the night, a crack in the facade. He poured another drink, arrogance masking the gnaw of unease. She'd pay for this chaos. Deportation would seal it. Morning brought another attack. Ms. Carter struggled, Tommy thrashing. Richard burst in. "What are you doing?" She flinched. "He's resisting." He took over, holding the boy firm. "See? Firm hand." But Tommy's eyes pleaded, breaking something small inside him. No. Stronger measures. He stormed downstairs, emailing contacts. Background check on former maid, deep dive. Arrogance peaked in isolation. Alone in the garage, polishing his car, a ritual of control, he muttered. She thought she could play hero. Not in my house. The rag moved in furious circles, shining, reflecting his hardened face. Staff avoided him now, whispers ceasing in his presence. Yet Tommy worsened, pale and withdrawn. Richard observed from afar, ego blinding him to the pattern. Refusal to admit fault fueled the escalation. Calls, criticisms, a web of dominance. Immigration's response came. Investigation underway. He smiled coldly. Done. The house tensed, air heavy. Richard sat at dinner, alone at the long table. Fork, scraping plate. Tommy upstairs, refusing to come down. He chewed mechanically. Right decision. Always. But in quiet moments, arrogance wavered. Just a flicker. Tommy's empty laughter haunted. He crushed it. More power, more control. Staff meeting the next day. No leniency, efficiency or out. Heads bowed. His voice echoed, unchallenged. Tommy's cough rattled the walls. Richard paused outside the door, hand on knob. Enter? No. Delegate. Arrogance built walls, higher each day. Elena's shadow loomed, unseen but felt. Elena Rodriguez huddled in the dim corner of her apartment, the knock at the door echoing like a thunderclap. Her heart hammered against her ribs, breath shallow and ragged. Miguel clung to her leg, his small fingers digging into her jeans. "Mama, who's that?" he whispered, eyes wide. She pressed a finger to her lips, pulling him closer into the shadows behind the couch. The knocking persisted, firm, official. "Ms. Rodriguez, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, open up!" Her mind spun, fragments of panic colliding. Richard's threat, whispered in fury as she left the estate, now real. "I'll call them," he'd snarled. And he had. She peeked through the thin curtain, spotting the uniformed agents outside, badges glinting under the hallway light. Sweat beaded on her forehead, trickling down her temple. Run. Where? The fire escape was rusted, the streets unfamiliar in the dark. No family here, no safety net. Just her and Miguel, cornered like prey. The agents' voices muffled through the door. "We have questions about your status. Open, or we'll return with a warrant." Elena's knees buckled slightly. She leaned against the wall, its peeling paint rough under her palm. Miguel whimpered, his cough starting. A soft, wet rattle that twisted her gut. Not now. She rubbed his back instinctively, but her hands shook. The inhaler sat empty on the counter, meds unaffordable since the firing. "Shh, mijo, it's okay." But lies tasted bitter on her tongue. Flashbacks assaulted her. Tommy's trusting sip of the tea, Richard's red-faced rage, the staff's pitying glances as she walked out. Fired for kindness. Now this. Hunted because of it. She slid down the wall, pulling Miguel into her lap. His warmth grounded her, but terror clawed inside. Deportation meant separation. From Miguel's school, the clinic, the fragile life she'd scraped together. Back to Mexico? Her parents' village was dust and desperation. No jobs, no future for a boy with lungs like glass. The knocking stopped, footsteps receding. Elena exhaled shakily, but relief was fleeting. They'd return. She knew it in her bones. Miguel coughed again, harder, his face flushing. "Hurts, Mama." She scooped him up, carrying him to the bed, her arms aching from the weight. The herbal pouch in her drawer, eucalyptus, honey, stared back as she mixed a weak brew with trembling hands. It eased him slightly, but supplies dwindled. No money for more. No job prospects. Word of the firing spread. Whispers in the immigrant network. Harrington blacklisted her. Night deepened, the apartment closing in. Elena paced the tiny kitchen, floorboards creaking under her worn sneakers. Bills piled on the table. Rent overdue, electricity notice glaring red. She counted coins from her jar. Enough for bread? Maybe milk. Miguel's school lunch? Borrow from neighbors again. Humiliation burned her cheeks. She'd applied everywhere. Cleaning gigs, waitressing. But calls went unanswered. Sorry, position filled. Or worse, silence. A text buzzed from her friend at the estate. Tommy worse. Attacks daily. Elena's chest tightened. The boy needed her remedy, her touch. She scribbled the full recipe on scrap paper, folding it neatly. Tomorrow, slip it to the butler anonymously. Risky. Agents watching? But Tommy's wheezes haunted her dreams. Can't let a child suffer. Her own son's cough punctuated the thought, a cruel echo. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving. Elena dressed Miguel for school, her movements mechanical. Be good, Amer. He nodded, backpack slung over his thin shoulders. Dropping him off, she lingered at the gate, watching him disappear into the crowd. Safe there, for now. But what if they came during the day? Took him while she hunted jobs? Panic surged, vision blurring. She gripped the fence, knuckles white. Job hunt resumed. Pounding pavements, resume in hand. A cafe owner glanced at her papers, eyes narrowing. Heard about Harrington. Trouble? Elena forced a smile. Misunderstanding. He shook his head. Can't risk it. Door after door, rejection stacking like bricks, walling her in. By noon, exhaustion dragged at her limbs. She sat on a bench, head in hands, fired for helping. Now, blacklisted, hunted. Donvao Zhuangkung, backed into a corner with no escape. Miguel's cough worsened by afternoon. At the free clinic, lines snaked out the door. Hours waited, only for the nurse to shrug. No refills without insurance, Elena pleaded, voice cracking. He's like the Harrington boy, asthma bad. The nurse's sympathy flickered, but rules held. Sorry. Outside, rain started, soaking her thin jacket. She trudged home, empty-handed, mind racing. Sell something. The gold necklace from her mother, last resort. Agent's card slipped under her door. Call us. Elena crumpled it, tossing it away. But fear lodged in her throat. Hide? Move. With what money? Miguel needed stability, routine. She brewed more tea for him, watching him sip, his relief mirroring Tommy's that fateful day. Irony stung. Her gift, now her curse. Evening shadows lengthened. Elena cooked sparse rice, portions shrinking. Miguel ate quietly, sensing her strain. Mama sat. She hugged him. Just tired. But inside, a storm raged. Resentment toward Richard's arrogance, self-blame for overstepping, terror of the unknown. Deportation loomed like a guillotine. A call from her parents. Mija, send money. Papa, worse. Elena's voice broke. Soon. Hanging up, she sobbed silently, back against the door. Walls closing in. Financial ruin, health crises, legal threats. No allies, no options. Danjen Bok Zhuangchung. Rain pelted the window, relentlessly. Elena stared at the note for the butler. The recipe. Deliver it? Risk exposure. For Tommy, yes. A spark of defiance flickered. She wouldn't break. Not yet. Miguel slept fitfully, coughs punctuating the night. Elena watched, sleepless. Agent's footsteps imagined in every creak. Pressure built, suffocating. How much more? Morning again. Another rejection email. Elena's resolve frayed, but she stood. For Miguel. But the noose tightened, inch by inch. Richard Harrington gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white against the leather, as his Mercedes tore through the rain-slicked streets of suburban New York. Midnight shadows blurred past, streetlights casting erratic gleams on the wet pavement. Tommy's wheezes rasped from the back seat, each one a dagger twisting in Richard's chest. The boy's face was pale in the rearview mirror, lips tinged blue, small hands clutching his blanket like a lifeline. Daddy! Hurts, Tommy gasped, his voice a fragile thread. Richard's foot slammed the accelerator, the engine roaring in response. Panic clawed at him, raw, unfamiliar. The nebulizer had failed at home, Ms. Carter fumbling uselessly before he shoved her aside. Doctor's line. Busy. Emergency room. Too far. But Elena's face flashed unbidden. Her calm hands. That damned tea working its quiet magic days ago. He'd driven to her address on impulse, pulled from the agency file buried in his desk. Desperation overrode pride. Hold on, son, he muttered, voice cracking. What if she's not there? What if she slams the door in my face? The apartment building loomed, a rundown brick structure, graffiti scarring its walls, a flickering bulb over the entrance. Richard screeched to a halt, rain pounding the roof like accusations. He scooped Tommy into his arms. the boy's weight feather-light yet crushing. Shielding him with his coat, he dashed to the door, pounding with his free fist. "Elena, open up! It's Richard Harrington! Tommy needs help!" Silence stretched, broken only by the downpour and Tommy's labored breaths. Richard pounded again, harder, water dripping from his hair into his eyes. "Please, he's having an attack, bad one. I don't know what to do." His voice broke, arrogance stripped away in the storm. Inside, turmoil raged. Begging the woman I fired? The one I reported? But Tommy's head lolled against his shoulder, a soft moan escaping. No choice. Pride be damned. The door cracked open, a chain rattling. Elena's face appeared in the sliver, eyes wide, shadowed with exhaustion and wariness. Her hair hung loose, a robe clutched around her slender frame. "Mr. Harrington?" Her voice was a whisper, laced with shock. She glanced at Tommy, and something shifted, concern flooding her features. The chain slid free. She swung the door wide. "Bring him in, quick!" Richard stumbled inside, the apartment's warmth hitting him like a slap. It was cramped. Faded wallpaper, a sagging couch, toys scattered on the threadbare rug. A far cry from his marble halls. He laid Tommy on the couch gently, the boy coughing weakly. Elena knelt immediately, her hand steady despite the tremor in her fingers. She touched Tommy's forehead, then his chest, assessing with practiced ease. "How long?" she asked, voice calm but urgent. "Hours. Started mild, then." Richard trailed off, pacing the tiny space, his wet shoes leaving puddles. Elena nodded, rising to the kitchenette. She rummaged in a drawer, pulling out herbs, dried leaves, a jar of honey. Water boiled on the stove, steam rising as she crushed the eucalyptus, movements fluid, instinctive. Richard watched, torn between gratitude and suspicion. "What are you doing?" "The doctor. No time." She stirred the brew, the aroma filling the room. Earthy, soothing. "This will open his airways. Trust me." Her eyes met his, steady, challenging. Richard hesitated, then nodded curtly. No other options. Tommy sipped the tea from her hand, his small gulps desperate. Minutes ticked by, agonizing. Richard hovered, fists clenching and unclenching. If this fails. But slowly, Tommy's wheezes eased, color returning to his cheeks. He leaned against Elena, sighing softly. Richard sank into a chair, head in hands. Relief washed over him, mingled with shame. How did you know?" Elena set the cup down, wiping her hands on her robe. Her expression softened, but resolve hardened her gaze. "Because I'm not just a maid, Mr. Harrington." She paused, drawing a deep breath. The room hung in suspense, rain pattering against the window like a drum roll. "I was a nurse, back in Mexico. Not licensed here, but trained in the villages. Saved kids from asthma, fevers, whatever came. No hospitals for miles." Her voice steadied, words flowing like a dam breaking. "Miguel, my son, he has it too. Same attacks. I've mixed that tea 100 times for him. It's not poison. It's survival." She rolled up her sleeve slightly, revealing faint scars. Burns from makeshift clinics, perhaps. Richard stared, the pieces clicking. Not a quack. A healer, hidden in plain sight. "But why hide it?" he demanded, voice rough, though curiosity edged out anger. Elena's eyes flashed. "Hide? You think I could say it? Hey boss, I'm undocumented, but let me treat your son. You'd call immigration faster." She glanced at the door, as if expecting agents. Richard flinched inwardly, his anonymous tip, now a noose around her neck. "Miguel's attacks. They're why I work so hard, sending money home, scraping for meds. But you fired me for helping Tommy the way I helped my own boy." Tommy murmured, nestling closer to her. "Lena. Better." Richard's throat tightened. The boy trusted her, more than him perhaps. Grief surged, memories of his wife flashing, her gentle hands on Tommy's chest during attacks. Elena mirrored that, compassion he'd dismissed as threat. I thought you were endangering him. Biases. Fear. His admission hung heavy, vulnerability cracking his facade. Elena stood, crossing her arms. Fear doesn't excuse cruelty. You reported me. Agents at my door. Miguel was terrified. We're cornered because of you. Her voice wavered, but she held his gaze. Shock rippled through Richard. His actions' ripple effect laid bare. Not just a firing, a life upended. He rose slowly, approaching. I was wrong, blind. But tonight, you saved him again. He glanced at Tommy, sleeping peacefully now. A door creaked down the hall. Miguel peeked out, rubbing sleepy eyes. Mama! Elena rushed to him, scooping him up. The boy looked strikingly like Tommy. Same age, same fragile build. This is Miguel, she said softly. Richard's breath caught. Twins in suffering. He has asthma too. Elena nodded. Worse some nights. Your son's like my own. The revelation hit like a wave. Shared pain, hidden depths. Richard's arrogance crumbled further. I can help. Cancel the report. Get you papers, meds. But Elena shook her head. Not for pity, for right. Thunder rumbled outside, mirroring the storm inside him. He'd intervened out of desperation. Now, truth forced reckoning. Tommy stirred, reaching for Elena's hand. Richard watched, a pang in his chest. Hero? Him? No, she was, but his intervention triggered a revelation. Secrets were revealed, shocking in their simplicity. A nurse, a mother, a survivor. Not the enemy he had painted. Elena set Miguel down, the boy toddling to Tommy's side. Brothers in breath. Richard exhaled, the weight lifting slightly. Thank you, he whispered. She nodded, guarded but open. The night deepened, revelations hanging in the air like mist. Richard offered his coat for Tommy. We'll go. But this isn't over. Elena's eyes searched for his, hope flickering. Intervention complete. Truth laid bare. The shock settled, reshaping everything. Richard Harrington stood in the cramped doorway of Elena's apartment, rain still dripping from his coat onto the worn linoleum floor. Tommy slept soundly on the couch now, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm, the crisis averted by Elena's steady hands. Richard's shoulders slumped, the adrenaline draining away like the storm outside. He ran a hand through his wet hair, eyes flicking to Elena as she tucked a blanket around the boy. Her movements were precise, maternal, nothing like the intruder he'd branded her. I don't know how to thank you, Richard muttered, his voice gravelly, stripped of its usual command. Inside, shame coiled tight in his gut. The man who closed million-dollar deals, who fired staff without a blink, reduced to begging at her door. He shifted his weight, the puddle at his feet spreading. Elena straightened, crossing her arms, her dark eyes meeting his without flinching. Thanks isn't what I need, she said softly but firmly. Miguel peeked from the bedroom door again, rubbing his eyes, and she waved him back gently. Richard nodded, swallowing hard. The revelations hung heavy. Her nursing past, Miguel's shared illness, the life he'd upended with one rash call. His mind replayed the firing, his booming voice, her silent exit. Arrogance had blinded him. Now, clarity burned. I was wrong, he admitted, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. Blind, scared. He glanced at Tommy, the boy's peaceful face a stark contrast to the chaos he'd wrought. What kind of father destroys help out of fear? Elena exhaled, leaning against the counter. Her robe slipped slightly at the shoulder, revealing the edge of a faded scar, remnant of her Village days, perhaps. Wrong doesn't fix the agents at my door, or the jobs I can't get. Her voice cracked just a fraction, betrayal flickering in her eyes. Richard's chest tightened. His anonymous tip, meant to protect, now a weapon turned on her. He pulled out his phone, fingers fumbling as he dialed. "This is Richard Harrington," he said into the line, voice regaining some steel. "Regarding the report on Elena Rodriguez, cancel it. Immediately. False alarm." The agent on the other end hesitated, but Richard's tone brooked no argument. "Yes, sir." "Noted." He hung up, pocketing the device. "Done. No more threats." Elena's posture relaxed slightly, but wariness lingered. "Just like that?" Richard met her gaze. "Power has perks, but I abused it. With you." Inside, regret surged, waves crashing against his ego's crumbling walls. Tommy stirred, murmuring Lena in his sleep. The sound pierced him. He stepped closer, the apartment's closeness amplifying his vulnerability. Come back, to the estate. Not as a maid, as a caregiver, for Tommy. Full pay, benefits, for Miguel too, meds, whatever he needs. Elena's eyes widened, then narrowed. Hope warred with hurt on her face. Why? Pity. She hugged herself, the weight of weeks, rejections, fear, empty cupboards, etching lines around her mouth. Richard shook his head. "Respect. You saved him. Twice. I see that now." Miguel toddled out fully now, clinging to her leg. Elena knelt, stroking his hair. The boy's cough echoed softly, mirroring Tommy's earlier struggle. Richard knelt too, level with them. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low, directed at her. "For the firing, the report, everything." Tears glistened in her eyes, but she blinked them away. Vindication tasted bittersweet. Acknowledgement after the storm. "You shamed me. In front of everyone." Richard nodded, the butler and cook's faces flashing in his mind. Public wrongs needed public rights. "I'll fix that too." He stood, offering his hand. She took it hesitantly, her palm calloused against his smooth one. Strength in her grip surprised him. "Tomorrow. At the house. Tell the staff." Elena rose, chin lifting. Relief washed over her features, softening the exhaustion. Miguel smiled shyly at Tommy, the boys shared frailty bridging worlds. Back at the estate hours later, dawn creeping through the windows, Richard carried Tommy to bed. The boy snuggled in, whispering, "Lena good." Richard's throat constricted. Yes, she was. He texted the staff, "Meeting at 8 a.m., urgent." In the kitchen, he paced, coffee steaming untouched. Regret morphed into resolve. How Quav his actions stared back, Tommy's frailty, Elena's ordeal. Time to face it. The staff gathered. Cook, butler, Ms. Carter, eyes curious, wary. Richard stood at the head of the table, suit rumpled from the night. "Last night, Tommy had a bad attack. I went to Elena." Gasps rippled. He held up a hand. "She saved him. Again. I fired her wrongfully. Reported her out of fear." The butler's eyebrows rose. Ms. Carter shifted uncomfortably. "She's a nurse. Unofficial, but skilled. Her son has asthma too. I was blind to that." He met each gaze. "I apologize. To you, for the tension. To her, publicly." He dialed Elena on speaker. "Come over. Now." Her voice, hesitant. "With Miguel?" "Yes." The line clicked off. Silence hung, thick. The cook nodded slowly. "She was good here." Richard exhaled. Vindication for Elena started here, his admission cracking the air. Elena arrived, Miguel in tow, her steps tentative on the marble floor. The staff turned as she entered the kitchen. Richard stepped forward. "Everyone, Elena's back. As a caregiver. I was wrong to fire her." Ms. Carter's face flushed. She mumbled an apology and left quietly. The butler smiled faintly. "Welcome back, miss." Elena's eyes shimmered, the weight lifting. Mignon in their nods, their softened expressions. Tommy toddled down, beaming. "Lena!" He hugged her legs. Miguel joined shyly. Richard watched, a pang in his chest. Family mending, his doing undone. He offered Elena a contract, official, generous. She signed, hand steady now. "For the boys," she said. He nodded. How Kwa stung him still. Sleepless eyes in the mirror that morning. But her vindication glowed, a light piercing his shadows. The house stirred to life, staff dispersing with new respect. Elena brewed tea openly now, the aroma filling the air. Richard lingered in the doorway, observing. Change hurts, but necessary. His arrogance's cost, paid in humility. Tommy laughed, the sound rare and pure. Richard's lips twitched. Mignon complete, wounds beginning to heal. Elena met his eyes across the room, gratitude mixed with caution. He averted his gaze, the mirror of his faults too clear. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. Richard stepped into the garden, alone. Regret lingered, but lighter. How Kwa faced. Path forward glimpsed. Richard Harrington stood in the sun-dappled garden of the estate, the morning light filtering through the leaves like scattered gold. Weeks had passed since Elena's return, the house transforming subtly under her presence. He watched from the terrace as she knelt in the flower bed with Tommy and Miguel, their small hands patting soil around sprouting tulips. Laughter bubbled up, Tommy's high-pitched giggle mixing with Miguel's softer chuckles. Elena's face glowed, dirt smudged on her cheek, her hair tied back loosely. She guided their fingers gently, whispering encouragement in a blend of English and Spanish. Richard sipped his coffee, the mug warm against his palm. The bitterness lingered on his tongue, mirroring the remnants of his old self. He'd changed, slowly, painfully. Board meetings felt distant now, his focus shifting to the boys' playdates, Elena's quiet efficiency in the home. But lessons etched deep. His arrogance had nearly cost everything. Fear, disguised as protection, had blinded him to kindness right under his roof. Elena glanced up, catching his eye. She smiled faintly, waving him over. Richard set the mug down, descending the steps with deliberate strides. His suit jacket hung open, tie loosened. A far cry from the buttoned-up CEO. Tommy spotted him first. "Daddy, look, flowers!" The boy held up a muddy hand, beaming. Richard knelt, ruffling his hair. "Beautiful, champ." Miguel shyly offered a bulb, and Richard took it, planting it beside Tommy's. Elena's hand brushed his accidentally, sending a spark he no longer ignored. Inside, his thoughts swirled. I'd built walls to keep pain out, but they trapped me in loneliness. Elena taught him otherwise, her resilience, her unspoken strength. She'd forgiven, not with words, but actions. Brewing tea openly now, sharing stories of her village nights under stars. Richard had listened, really listened, for the first time in years. Grief over his wife softened, making room for this new warmth. Later, in the kitchen, Elena prepared lunch. Rice and beans infused with herbs, a nod to her roots. The staff moved with ease around her, the cook chatting freely. "Miss Elena, that smells divine." She laughed, a sound that filled the room like light. Richard entered, rolling up his sleeves. "Need help?" She handed him a knife, their eyes meeting. "Chop the onions." He complied, tears stinging, not just from the vegetable. Vulnerability suited him, humbling the man who'd once commanded rooms. Tommy and Miguel burst in, tracking mud. "Hungry," Tommy declared. Elena scooped them up, wiping their hands with a towel. Richard watched, a pang in his chest. Family wasn't blood or borders. It was this. Shared meals, muddy footprints, quiet trusts rebuilt. He'd learned it the hard way. Prejudice poisoned more than any herb ever could. The thu came not from grand gestures, but daily choices, to listen, to see beyond surfaces. The afternoon brought a call from the board. "Richard, investors are restless." He paced the study, phone in hand. "Handle it." "I'm stepping back." Hanging up, he exhaled. Legacy meant nothing without heart. Elena entered, carrying a tray of tea. "For you." He took it, their fingers lingering. "Thank you. For everything." She sat across from him, eyes searching. "You've changed," he nodded. "You showed me how." Together, they founded a small initiative. Funds for immigrant families with asthmatic children. Meds, education, herbal kits vetted by doctors. Richard spoke at the first meeting, voice steady. "I was wrong once. Let fear rule, but kindness bridges what divides." Attendees nodded, stories shared. Elena stood beside him, her presence a quiet anchor. Back home, the boys played, breaths easy under her watchful eye. Evenings softened into routine. Richard read bedtime stories, Elena singing lullabies. Tommy nestled against him, Miguel on her lap. "Good night, Papa," Tommy murmured one night. Richard's eyes misted. Papa, not just to one, but both. Elena squeezed his hand across the room. Love bloomed unexpectedly, like the tulips in the garden, rooted in soil once thought barren. Richard lingered by the window after the boys slept, stars winking overhead. He'd lost a wife, nearly lost a son to his own hubris. But gain came in redemption. Seeing Elena not as help, but equal. Partner. The lesson crystallized. Empathy over ego, connection over control. Prejudice crumbled under truth's weight. Forgiveness mended what broke. Elena joined him, her head on his shoulder. "Happy?" she whispered. He pulled her close. "More than I deserve," she smiled. "We all deserve second chances." Their kiss was soft, sealing the shift. The estate hummed with life now, laughter echoing halls once silent. Richard walked the garden alone at dawn, dew cool underfoot. Tulips bloomed vibrant, symbols of growth. He'd stumbled, fallen, risen. The moral etched in every petal. Kindness transcends divides. Fear chains, but love frees. Tommy's voice called from inside. "Breakfast." Richard turned, smiling. Home awaited. Not a monument to wealth, but a haven of hearts intertwined. The journey ended here, in quiet triumph. Lessons learned, life renewed. In the end, this story reminds us that true strength lies in overcoming our biases and fears, embracing kindness, empathy, and forgiveness to build bridges where walls once stood. A simple act of compassion can shatter prejudices about class, race, and background, showing that family is forged not by blood or borders, but by choice and heart. What about you? Have you ever faced judgment or witnessed a moment where kindness changed everything? Share your thoughts or personal stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear them and build a community of understanding. Thank you for watching and joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more inspiring tales. See you in the next video.